I released version 1 of Pandora in August of 2023 and described all the tools in my tutorial 98. In version 2, I've added 3 more tools and modified an existing tool to make it more useful. I've also added code that allows the Ctrl-Z keystroke combination to perform an undo. In this tutorial, I'll describe these extra tools and how to use them. For those who have not watched the original tutorial, I'll also explain how to install the extension. There'll be a link in the description so that you can download and install it. After downloading, the extension called Pandora V02.dll should be moved to this directory. If the directory doesn't exist, simply create one using exactly that name. Then launch Vegas Pro, select View, then Extensions, and select Pandora V02. The Pandora interface should then appear with the other tabbed windows. If it appears in an undocked window, it can be docked with the other tabbed windows using the normal docking method. Once installed, the extension will remain tabbed unless you change the window layout. It will also appear the next time you launch Vegas Pro. I'll now describe each of the extra tools. This tool in version 1 had only one function. That was to apply crossfades of a configurable length to all events on selected tracks. In this version, I've added another function. You may not want all the events on the track to be crossfaded. The second option allows you to select a group of events and apply crossfades to only those selected events. The tool's interface is very simple, comprising a frame input field, a green Apply Crossfades button, and a blue Apply Crossfades button. How you use it is simple too. I explained how to use the first function in tutorial 98. Just to recap, with a number of events on the timeline, select the track header, enter the amount of crossfade required, then press the green button. If you need to crossfade events on more than one track, select the tracks using Ctrl-click. There's another function the tool performs. If there are any gaps between events, they will be closed when the crossfades are applied. For this reason, make sure that any required breaks in the event sequence are completed after the tool is used. Now let's look at the second function. There will be occasions when you want to crossfade a number of events only. The second function allows you to do this. Note though, only one sequential group of events can be modified at any one time. Attempting to modify 2 or more groups that have unselected events in between will disrupt the timeline. I'll show what I mean by that shortly. Let's see this function in action. I've loaded a project containing a number of video events, and there are no crossfades. There are a group of events that I want to have crossfades between. A separate group also needs crossfades. As I mentioned, I can only apply crossfades to one sequential group of events at a time, so I'll select the first group. As you will be aware, this can be done by Shift-click first and last to select the whole group, Control-click to select and add individual events to the group, or you can change to the Selection Edit tool and lasso the group of events. Now I can set the crossfade duration by entering the number of frames in the frame input field. Note that the value in this field applies to both functions. I can then click the blue Apply Crossfades button, and all the selected group of events will have a crossfade between them. Note, as you can see, if there's a gap between the start of the timeline and the start of the first event, this gap will remain. Now, watch what happens if I select the first 3 events and also the last 3 events. You see how the penultimate 2 events have been disrupted. If you have more than one group of events that need crossfades, don't try to use this tool on them all at the same time. The first new tool I've added in version 2 places the titles and text generated media onto any selected track. OK, you may ask, why do I need a tool to do this when I can simply drag the generated media down onto the timeline with the mouse? Under normal circumstances, there's no arguing with that. However, as I was creating my tutorials, I found I was spending a good deal of time placing a title of a specific length with fades between chapters of my tutorial. This title had to be a specific distance from the last event. Then I had to place the first event of the new chapter at a specific distance from the end of the title. This was becoming very tedious, so I decided to see if I could do this with a script. I then incorporated this script into Pandora. Let me demonstrate the tool. In the interface, there are 4 input fields, a checkbox, and a green Add the Event button. Pad length allows you to configure the number of frames between the cursor position and the start of the title. This pad length value will also be used to offset the cursor from the end of the title. Event length simply determines the duration of the title. The fade in out length will set the duration of the fades at either ends of the title. The checkbox state determines whether a marker will be placed at the final cursor position. The Select Preset Name drop-down list determines which title preset is applied to the title. So that's a description of the tool. Let's look at it in action. A point to note, the tool doesn't know whether auto ripple is enabled or not, so make sure there's enough space between the events where the title is to be added. I'll start by using the default values. First, I decide where the title sequence should start. For me, normally this would be at the end of an event, so I'll place the cursor there. Now I click the green Add the Event button. A Titles and Text Generated Media event is placed 20 frames from the end of the event. The title is 5 seconds long, has fades of 25 frame duration, and has the default preset. The cursor is now situated 20 frames from the end of the title. I can now drag the first event of my next chapter to snap it to the cursor. Now about the preset name. The preset drop-down list contains all inbuilt presets and all custom presets. To select a preset, scroll down the list and select the one you require. Now I'll change the parameters. Chapter title is one of my custom presets. I'm going to enable the checkbox this time. Sometimes it's necessary to preserve the final cursor position. Without a marker, if you move the cursor away for any reason, or in error, the final cursor position will be lost. I can now move the cursor away, knowing that there's a marker for me to snap the final event to. The second new tool allows the addition of empty events or adjustment events. The interface is made up of two sections. The top section allows the addition of empty or adjustment events immediately above selected events. Let's deal with this section first. I have an audio event and I want to place a Title Studio effect above it. Title Studio is an effect, not generated media, so it can't exist as an event. It has to be applied to an event. By placing an empty event directly above the audio event and having the empty event's duration the same as the audio event, I can apply the Title Studio effect to the empty event. I'll now demonstrate how the tool works. I'll click the Insert Empty Event button in the top section. Nothing happens. This is because the tool needs to know which event I'm interested in. I have to select it. If you try to use this option when there is no video track above the selected event, a warning message will appear. If for some reason you have an audio track above the selected event and you try to use this option, a different warning message will appear. If you need to place an empty event above a number of events, select these events in the normal way, click the button, and an empty event will be added directly above each selected event. The Insert Adjustment Event option works in exactly the same way. However, you must be running Vegas Pro 21 or later to use adjustment events. Otherwise, a warning message will appear. The bottom section also allows the addition of empty and adjustment events. With this option, the event's duration can be configured and the event will be placed starting at the current cursor position. Note that one or more video tracks must be selected, otherwise the action will fail and a warning message will show. Here's a demonstration. I'll first select the audio track. I can configure the length of either type of event using the duration entry fields. The timescale can be in either seconds or frames, selectable with the two radio buttons. The default is 10 seconds, so I'll change that to 20 seconds. As you can see, a message pops up informing that the event must be created on a video track. Now to select frames and set the duration to 30 frames. On my PAL system, 30 frames equals 1 second and 5 frames. The Insert Adjustment Event option works in exactly the same way. The third new tool allows a render sequence of up to 20 projects to be created. This sequence can then be batch rendered. You may have seen other batch rendering tools. The difference with this one is that the projects don't need to be located in one folder. They can be in different locations. Each project will be rendered to its own folder. The UI consists of a drop-down list containing all the rendering templates available, a button that allows a sequence of projects to be created, and a button that starts the rendering sequence. The first thing to note is that once a render template is selected using the drop-down list, all projects in the render sequence will be rendered using that template. Because of this, there are 4 scenarios that may occur. Example 1. If you select a video template and the render process encounters a project containing only audio, a message will appear informing that the project and renderer are incompatible. This message will cause the render sequence to be paused until it's acknowledged, so it's advisable to ensure that all projects in the sequence conform to the render template. The offending project will then be ignored. Example 2. If you select a video template and the render process encounters a project containing audio, but also containing one or more empty video tracks, the render will complete. The result will be a video file with audio but no video. Example 3. If you select an audio template and the render process encounters a project containing only video, the render will complete. The result will be a blank audio file. Example 4. If you select an audio template and the render process encounters a project containing video and audio, the render will complete. The render will be an audio file. Let's go through how the tool works. The first thing to do is to select a render template from the drop-down list. As an example, I'll leave the template at AC3 Stereo DVD. Before going any further, I need to describe what will happen after the project selection is complete, but before the render sequence starts. The tool will first check whether the current project needs saving. This is because the render process will close the current project down before the render sequence starts. At this point in the process, the current project can only exist in one of 4 states. I'll explain these 4 states and show what will happen at this stage in the procedure for each one. In this state, the current project has content but is unnamed and has therefore not been saved. This message is displayed advising that it should be saved before the render sequence is started. Once the message is dismissed by clicking the OK button, it's your responsibility to save the current project. As I mentioned earlier, if you don't save it, it will be closed down without saving when the render sequence starts. The current project in this state has been saved and hasn't been modified since that save. In this case, there's no need to inform the user. The render sequence can be started without destroying the current project. In this state, the saved project has been modified. Now a message will be displayed asking whether you want to save the modified version. If you select Yes, the project will be saved with its current name before the render sequence starts. Selecting No will prevent the render sequence starting so that the project can be renamed and saved. The project sequence will still exist so you can then click the Render button. If the current project is blank, the procedure will continue without displaying any message. OK, with that explained, I can now proceed to populate the render sequence. I'll click the appropriate button, which opens up an Explorer dialog. If the selected project has already been rendered, as you've probably seen earlier, a message will be displayed giving you the option to either overwrite the existing rendered file or skip that project. Now I'll browse for my first project to render, remembering that it should be an audio project. As I mentioned, in this case the project has been rendered before, so I must choose whether to overwrite this file or not. If I choose no, the project won't be rendered. Another Explorer window then opens and I can browse for another folder and select another audio project. I'll carry on with this procedure until I've selected all the projects that are to be rendered. To keep it simple, I'll just select a total of 4 projects. As I mentioned earlier, you can select a total of 20 projects for the sequence. When all the projects have been chosen and I've clicked Open for the last project, on the next Explorer dialog, I click Cancel to terminate the sequence selection procedure. To render the 3 projects, I click the Render button. Remember that I chose not to render the first project. I'll now select 4 video projects to render. To render these, I'll select one of the vocoder render templates. I realise that there are a lot of templates in the drop-down list, but here's a tip for finding the one you want quickly. If you click the down arrow so that the template name is highlighted, you can start typing the name of the template you want. Of course, this requires you to know the template name. In this case, I'll just start typing VOU and the list will open at the vocoder entries. Before I click the render button, I'll explain how to terminate the render sequence. When creating this tool, I realized that once the render sequence had started, I needed to build in a mechanism to allow it to be terminated, especially if there were many long projects in the sequence. During project rendering, there's a standard progress dialog that appears. On this dialog, there's a cancel button. If you click this button, another dialog will appear. These last two dialogs are system generated, so I have no control over them. It's important that you respond to the second dialog before the current render process finishes. If you respond after the current render process finishes, the next project in the render sequence will load, be rendered, and the render sequence will continue. Under normal circumstances, you'll have plenty of time to respond before the current project is rendered. This second dialog gives you the option to either save the current render or not. Clicking No will save the current render and carry on with the render sequence. Clicking Yes will not save the current render and display another dialog. This gives you the choice either to continue rendering the remaining sequence or to abort the sequence. Because I chose to abort the sequence during this render, the contents of the 4 folders will have the results of the render procedure. Because I chose to abort the sequence during this render, the project wasn't rendered. As a result of the sequence abort, the final project also wasn't rendered. Finally, a few words about 2 bugs which were present in version 1. First, those of you who have watched tutorial 98 may remember that a particular failing of version 1 was the inability to use the Ctrl-Z keystroke combination to perform an undo. As you will have noticed, I used that keystroke combination several times in this tutorial. This is because, with the help of Edward Troxell of jetdv.com, I've introduced extra code to correct this inability. However, there is no undo function for the batch render tool. By the way, if you want to learn all about scripting for Vegas Pro, jetdv.com is the website to visit. The second was quite an obscure bug in the Apply Crossfades tool that only manifested itself under certain conditions. Say you had a number of events on a selected track where each event already had a crossfade with its neighbour. If you selected a crossfade duration of 0 frames in an attempt to remove all crossfades, the crossfades would be removed, but each event would have normal fades remaining. This has been fixed in this version. Note that normal fades that existed before this tool is used in this way will also be removed. They will need re-establishing. The Pandora toolbox has improved my editing efficiency greatly. Version 2 includes 3 more tools that certainly make my life easier. Don't forget you can download Pandora using the link provided in the details, and it's free to use. Have fun!